Nice, nice, nice. We got a new one by Bellular. These numbers terrify Blizzard. Dragonfly will not be the same. By who is it? Bellular Clips? Bellular Warcraft. Alright, let's see what he has to say about this.
Have a video for you today. So
yeah, let's go.
People think that the Sepulchre nerfs are getting out of hand. They don't like
seeing
the goalposts move with each nerf.
Mm-hmm.
But yet, we all know that Blizzard must have a reason to do this, right? They must be doing this for some reason.
Sure.
Well, we have done a lot of data digging. We've got a pretty impressive set of sheets. We have now got the numbers. So that means it is time to learn why, even though it has made people angry, Sepulchre became the most nerfed raid in World of Warcraft's long history. What's even more is they actually then announced even more nerfs after we started the video. It was targeted at getting the number of cutting-edge kills up before the end of Season 3. It's wild stuff, so strap in. Numbers first, explanation second. Rating, especially Mythic, is about smart use of time. It's about optimizing for the best returns. And it's no wonder that people who play MMOs like WoW with its auction house or EVE end up getting into stocks, which of course have gone a bit down as of late. Now we all know that diversification is the key to long-term investing results, and a new platform, today's sponsor, called Masterworks, is changing up that investing game by allowing you to invest in blue-chip art. Picasso, Banksy, Warhol, Monet.
Oh, he went to an ad.
Okay. Only accessible to the ultra elite, who of course make bank by diversifying into art, taking advantage of it as a hedge against inflation, and how it does not correlate to stocks as much, making it awesome for diversification. Now, art has outperformed the S&P 500, that's the 500 largest US stocks, by 164% over the last 26 years.
I was like, what is he talking about? It's like, oh,
They extensively research and purchase the art, they securitize each piece with the SEC, and that allows members to buy and sell shares of that art. You make profit once the paintings sell at auction, and so far they've sold 4 paintings since 2017, netting over 25% annual rate of return to investors. Of course, past performance is no guarantee of future results. I mean, legally I've got to say that. It's also just true, and you should take that with any form of investing.
Oh, God, that.
With the advantages and the benefits of diversification, demand has been very high for their platform, especially after their recent painting exit, so there's a wait list. But our viewers can get priority access by going to masterworks.art/Bellular or simply clicking the link down below. So, check them out. Could be an opportunity of interest to you. Okay, now we've paid the bills, let's talk about our first 3 months in numbers. They tell a clear but not complete story.
Let us.
Masteria had 10,632 first boss kills and 422 final boss kills.
Okay.
For Sanctum, that's 7,510 dead Tarragoose and 643 dead Sylvanuses. Now, the jailer may indeed be the uber hard.
Wait.
510 dead final boss kills.
10,422.
7,510 dead Tarragoose.
Interesting. So you had more Sylvanas. I know that people were saying that Chains was technically easier than an easier raid overall, and I think it's true. Once you get past Paintsmith, you're pretty much like. Look at the numbers after Paintsmith, they're pretty much the same, right? It's like almost everyone who killed Paintsmith killed Guardian. Almost everyone killed Fate Scribe, which is interesting that only like 66% killed Kel'Thuzad from the ones who killed Paintsmith. Paintsmith was literally like, look at the drop from Paintsmith. Paintsmith is like half the people almost. Right, so it's crazy. And then yeah, only a third killed Sylvanas. Interesting. Yeah, but still more people killed Sylvanas than what's it called? Than Denathrius. But would she be considered an easier boss, or was there just like more things that help you kill her? But you know, that should be taken into account outside of the. It's hard to say, but yeah, less people kill Terragru. I guess less participation.
Be the uber hard, cool dude, bro, that the story thinks he is, because Mythic Sepulchre had just 3,808 first boss kills and a mere 177 final boss kills. damn. Now, obviously, there is the, initial, like, first sort of week availability stuff, with the Jailer, but I think across 3 months, that doesn't matter too much. Now, that number is under half of Natria. It's
those stuns are rough.
ish times less than the Sanctum final boss kills.
Yeah.
That tells a story, doesn't it? That's just wild. And this dataset does actually include many, many waves of nerfs. Now, this shows us that, for whatever reason, fewer mythic guilds are going the distance. If first boss kills are a measure of mythic participation, then to be honest with you, the story is still grim, because Sepulchre has half the participation of Sanctum.
Yep.
But wait, it's just really hard. So what's the problem? Well, let's compare some boss sort of kill numbers as the weeks roll on. Now, this way we can actually see what the nerfs did. And, I mean, spoiler, this is big. Here's Halondrus, the big raid-wiping crab.
Yeah, the crab.
The week before, April the 26th/7th nerfs, a total of 302 guilds had killed him across all regions. The week after, that number soars to 788, a 160% increase.
Week 2 weeks before, 1 week before, so another 100, and then it's like, why participate early, basically, is what you're saying.
All we need to know that these nerfs were indeed impactful. Anduin Rin serves as another example then. The week before he was nerfed on the 17th, 18th of May, 380 guilds had defeated him.
Okay.
The week after, that number is 608. By the week before his second big nerf on June 21st, 1,077 guilds had killed him. The week after, with the new nerf, that was 1,221. So, not a whole lot more, but definitely still an increase. Obviously, you would expect increases from week to week, but throughout the whole dataset, we do see a correlation between nerfs and then increases in kills. Though that said, we have seen a more generally diminishing effect with further and further nerfs. So, this all seems a bit spooky. But how does it actually stack up with other raids? Well, one way that we can do that is we can track the percentage of mythic guilds that got the cutting edge achievement within 3 months. Now, Emerald Nightmare kind of stands out for this one, but that's because Emerald Nightmare...
Yeah.
What's fascinating, though, is how low...
The worst part is, I was in a guild that barely got through the mythic spider boss, whatever her name was. It was pretty damn sad, yeah, straight up.
Hold and Tomb of Sargeras are at 1.86% and 1.55% respectively. So, how do raids from World of Warcraft's most successful expansion have the lowest number? Well, they were bloody hard, that's why. Nighthole had multiple rock-hard bosses, and Tomb of Sargeras was just infamous between Kil'jaeden and Fallen Avatar. So much so that Sepulchre has actually had people speaking of Kil'jaeden and Fallen Avatar again.
Yeah.
And when you look at the first boss kills, it does actually seem that participation was actually highest in Uldir, the first raid tier of BFA. A little bit of me wonders if the big popularity of the Race to World First is like a large live stream community event with loads of viewers and sponsors.
Yeah, kind of.
Help to notch up that participation. Just a sort of a wondering thought. Now, you may notice that Emerald Nightmare's first boss kills are pretty low, and then greatly increases for Nighthold, but in more recent times you can see very clear spikes for the first raids of expansions, and then, ones that are, I think, far clearer when we go and we look at the heroic and the normal numbers. Now, when you compare Sepulchre, the first ones, to Ny'alotha, it's kind of fascinating, and to be honest, it is a little rough for the game. Remember, the Ny'alotha was BFA's 4th raid tier. Sepulchre is only Shadowlands' 3rd. Yet, 6,111 guilds cleared Rathian in the first 3 months, while only 3,808 had cleared Sepulchre's first boss within 3 months. That does look like a decline in mythic participation to me. Jailer versus N'Zoth is also quite funny. 177 Jailer kills in this time frame, 383 N'Zoth in this time frame. So no matter what way you cut it, it is clear that Sepulchre of the First Ones has struggled with numbers majorly. I mean...
Okay, but like, all things considered, there's like substantially less players playing it, right? Like Shadowlands like been going like downhill from the beginning. It started shit, continued shit, been lied to the whole expansion like crazy. There's no ripcord, and then there was like there's no faith in Blizzard. I'm pretty sure it's like no one even cared about like the allegation. The allegation was like the tip of the iceberg, but literally the tip, just the tip of the iceberg. It made absolutely no difference for people. Like the game was just in a horrible state to begin with. Half the specs are not playable in like actual content. It's like it's not fun.
In a big way, this is all rather shocking for the game, and it's clearly the impetus for Blizzard's successive nerfs. And what's shocking to me is that this raid tier was so much more accessible than other ones in the Shadowlands expansion. Covenant restrictions were lifted. Getting 4-piece was eventually for people guaranteed via the creation catalyst. With all that power and less friction to get characters up to speed, less friction to play alts, how has this raid managed to produce such dismal numbers? Well, time to find out. So Sepulchre has gone down as one of the hardest, if not the hardest raids in WoW's history, in addition to being the most nerfed. It has a record number of very difficult mythic bosses with many unforgiving mechanics that had to be nerfed into oblivion to get the average cutting-edge guild to clear. And you've got to remember, an average cutting-edge mythic raiding guild is,
that guy died, so
very high-end, very highly skilled guild. So what went wrong then? Why are the bosses like that? Did Blizzard miss their tuning targets? Did they misjudge their own player power systems or their own players? Well, while this graph is a bit rough, it's not very ideal or completely accurate with its scale, I think it does serve to illustrate a point, and that point is the
double Lego. Which one? Oh, tier 4 set heroic mythic. What happened? What should have happened? Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, the boost was just like too big.
The player power was maxed out so early on in the Race to World First guilds that very little power was actually gained later on. And those additional power gains later on would gradually nerf the difficulty of raid bosses for everyone else. Okay, why? Well, I have to wonder if it's the tuning requirements of the Race to World First. That's an event where guilds are putting in more and more insane preparation than ever, and I'm going to take you through some of that. You see, with split runs, Race to World First guilds are able to accelerate through World of Warcraft's gearing curve at breakneck pace. Even more so nowadays, because these guilds are also large, well-funded social media organizations that have got legions of dedicated fans. And they actually pay those fans World of Warcraft gold to help them with split runs.
Yeah.
Right. Those fans are then able to trade desirable pieces of loot to the raid team. And the amount of gold spent is just eye-watering. So using just Liquid, who were previously called Limit.
It was like 2,000, no, even more, 20,000.
The Liquid spent 723 million gold on the Sepulchre, while Echo spent 694 million gold.
It's fucked up.
Sanctum, Liquid spent 279 million, while Echo spent 400.
Jesus Christ, bro. This is, by the way, this is not like they spent it. This is like an IOU. They didn't have all this gold. It's just like they're paying it back afterwards.
Almost enough to max out a Diablo Immortal character. Well,
not really.
This stuff, of course, doesn't fluctuate.
Not really. All that, not really. It's still not enough.
From tier to tier.
Oh god, bro. That was good, yeah.
I think that number is going up. So, the upshot is that these guilds get a huge power spike very early on because split runs let them condense many weeks of loot progress into like 2 or so weeks. Because of this, Blizzard had to tune later Sepulchre of the First One's bosses to that power level, because if they didn't, the race would just end up being a cakewalk. Now, this meant that Blizzard were tuning those bosses for nearly maxed out gear with both double legendaries and a 4-piece set bonus.
It still took them a month.
I suppose a part of this is that it would never have been possible to defeat Jailer before the first reset because he literally wasn't available. Now anyway, This tuning from Blizzard meant that by the time that average cutting-edge Mythic guilds got to Anduin and beyond, they were actually at the same power level as the Raced World First Raiders, and they couldn't really exceed it that much. Something that otherwise has been possible in pretty much every other raid tier. These average Mythic players just weren't able to gradually outkill the bosses, meaning that with that not being possible, Blizzard had to increase clear rates by nerfing these bosses.
Yeah.
As they ended up, intentionally or not, tuning bosses not only for incredibly well-geared characters, but also for that and being the best, most well-prepared raiders in the world. Nerfs happen pretty much every tier. What's different is the extent here. These were not just minor number changes to account for a lack of gradual power acquisition. No. Some Mythic mechanics have been flat out removed. Others, while not completely gone, are essentially nerfed to basically not exist when compared to their original state. The sheer amount and frequency of nerfs is unprecedented when compared to previous raid tiers in the World of Warcraft. So clearly then, the scale of the Raced World First is kind of getting away from Blizzard. It makes it extremely hard for Blizzard to actually nail their tuning here. This means nerfs. Those nerfs then cause confusion and discontent, and that trickles down from the Mythic Raiders to people who watch them, to the other difficulties.
Yeah.
Because those with the most skin in the game often set the tone for the conversation, regardless of if that's actually their intent or not. And then that begs the question, what do the leaders of these organizations have to say? So Max leads Liquid, Scribe leads Echo. What do they think? Well, per Max, bosses tend to be tuned.
Is that in every previous tier, every boss was tuned to be killable week 1 by Race World First. So naturally we had less gear and missed a major power spike every patch to Lego, etc. This raid we ended up getting 2x Lego and almost best in slot gear. Yeah.
To be killable within week 1 in the race. That means killable without a second week of split runs, mythic gear, and in this case, things like double legendaries. Of course, it's a bit different this raid tier, because for narrative reasons, they split the post-Anduin content to be in the next week.
Yep.
Now, this is why there is, the sort of first reset thing. That's why there's always a lot of tension and excitement in the race as it's leading up to the first reset. I'll take some numbers here for you. So, Denathrius opened on the 15th of December. He was killed 8 days later on the 23rd. Sylvanas Mythic opened on the 13th of July. She died on the 20th. The Sepulchre race started on the 9th, but the final 3 bosses only unlocked the following week. And that ultimately led to a situation where Zovaal ended up being defeated on the 26th, a full 17 days after the race began. That is just more resets of player power that Blizzard had to tune Jailer and his mates for in order to have a good level of challenge for these players who are the most competitive on the planet. Plus, as Max points out, the raid was actually just really hard. The bosses required...
It's kind of lost on me that this raid also had way harder bosses than raids previous, but not in a conventional way. So many bosses were extremely precise positioning wise and were filled with binary pass or fail, so it slowed your progression rate to a crawl.
Extremely precise positioning, and they had binary pass-fail mechanics that slowed down progression.
Why does he have Nickelback as his picture?
Sorts of guilds who would tend to just limp closer and closer and closer to the finish. Per Scribe then, what split runs do for... I think
somehow a lot of people don't see the connection between split runs and raid difficulty and nerfs. No splits means less gear on top guilds, means bosses are tuned. Weaker means worse guilds can clear bosses easier, as the content nerfs itself weekly with more gear. A lot of people don't see the connection between split runs and raid difficulty. Bosses are tuned, weaker, worse guilds can clear bosses easier, as the content nerfs itself weekly with more gear. Yeah.
Massive problem. And
basically,
that them not being possible would be good for them as Mythic Raiders, because it would be, they don't have to do it. It sucks. But it would also be good for the casual players, in his view. I would presume that would be because it would make Blizzard's balance job a bit less mad. And that would be sort of good for all the players. But because big guilds are the only ones who have got the logistics to actually do split runs in this way and pay millions of gold to trade loot. It's one of those things where, yeah, there might be more. It's a bit like the tax code. The more complex it gets, the more it favors people with lots of money who can
idiot.
afford good accountant. Now, Scribe also talked about removing barriers, and for him that means things like removing covenant requirements for soul binds, the creation catalyst being there in day one, the game being more alt-friendly, which thankfully they're doing for the next expansion, and reducing the impact of split runs. Also for him, reducing the need for add-ons by tweaking.
Offering this account wide Valor Flux with now new. Yep, basically. That's fine. Reduce impact of split runs. Yep. Between tryhards and others, which is unrelated to skill. Yep, that's fine. Reduce impact of split runs, create a massive gap between tryhards and other, which is unrelated to skill. Reduce the need for add-ons, example, add extra button for Dreadlord's voting, and makes us people susceptible, light up or something.
Implementation, and then just like less odd things like people feeling they've got to farm Sylvanas daggers. So that all makes sense.
Make UI, like if you have weird boss mechanics that are new, just make the UI for it. Like it's not that hard.
Kind of keep on noticing is a lot of the things that say Scribe would say that, you know, in a way are going to be good for the Race to the World first and that kind of sphere of the game. They're generally quite good for the rest of the game too, because it mostly involves just making the design of WoW.
Yeah, if the bosses are easier, they will die faster in Race to the World first, making it more interesting, and also a lot more people outside of Race to the World first can actually get them done. So it's like it's a win-win-win situation. Everyone wins, everyone participates, right? And then more people are doing the Mythic Raid. You get like more people farming it. You get like people are not going to quit if they can farm it, you know. So
more reasonable. So all this stuff makes sense. It would help to level the playing field, it would increase the game's playability, and likely result in Blizzard having an easier time balancing their game. And that's good, because if if balancing is easier, then it can be done with less issues, and they can move on to other tasks that are also important. As for me, look, my opinion does not matter here. It just doesn't. The strict 20-player format makes Mythic impossible for my guild. That's just it. The current way Mythic's done will never appeal to me.
Yep.
And that's very much unlike how Warcraft was before, something that I think a lot of modern players won't even be aware of these days. And that is that the raid formats were restructured in 2014. You see, back in the day, you used to have 10 and 25.
Oh, yep.
Mode.
Yep.
The heroic mode
Cataclysm
was equivalent to today's Mythic. But because there was a 10-player and a 25-player mode, it would mean that a more casual friends and family guild that's only really fielding like 10 to 12 raiders, they would be able to
friends and family
to the hardest difficulty mode in the game without, you know, changing the format and the social tone of their guild. So that just meant that friends and family guilds, once they were done with heroic, they could actually have some fun just seeing what early Mythic is like. So that's just a gripe that I have, and it's why a lot of this discussion will never apply to me personally. Alright, so it's actually been a little while since the rest of this video was recorded. All of our numbers were for the first 3 months of the raid tier, but of course there have been a few more up-to-date things, so I want to hop in here and give you guys a bit of an update. Right, so these numbers do not change the fact that Sepulchre is the hardest raid basically in history, and that it had all-time low participation at every difficulty bracket. Like, that's insane, and to me it's kind of depressing because honestly I really enjoyed the raid when I hopped into it. But we want to see how it changed. So, how did the nerfs go? That's the big question. Well, as of the week just before the big, and I think most likely the final massive nerf wave, we did see that the number of guilds that have defeated the Chuckler went up to 453.
The Chuckler.
A month before that point in time, that number was 100.
Again, these nerfs are so bad for the game, man. It's like, why even bother doing it when it's hard then?
Almost doubled. Rygalon, 2.5 times increase, almost a 2.5.
Jesus Christ, bro.
And those are numbers that don't actually
so bad.
reflect the most recent wave of nerfs.
So bad.
For those nerfs, this is kind of funny. So from a single day of the latest and probably final nerf wave being active, 134 guilds defeated Zoval across EU and NA, right? Now that's kind of crazy as a number, because that is actually over 45% more kills than all of the previous week combined in one day. Big, right? And for the other bosses,
I guess
they do have day one numbers that basically don't eclipse last week's numbers, but they are all still quite high, which just basically means we're going to see so many kills, at least compared to the trickle that we had seen over the next like 3 or so weeks in the lead up, of course, to Season 4. And then, when we look at some other bit more up-to-date numbers, after almost a week, so 5 to 6 days since the humongous wave nerf to the Jailer, Jailer kills have actually risen by 58%. Now, the other bosses in total have went about 5 to 11%, so you can really see it's big for the Jailer. Now, there's still about 661 guilds that we can tell from the data who are actually progressing the last 3 bosses of the raid. If you include Anduin, that's 1,235 guilds. So really the big question here for Blizzard and these guilds is, in the number of raid nights that you're doing in a week, is that going to be enough to actually get the clear and to get those ahead of the curve and cutting edge numbers to be kind of proportionately where Blizzard would actually want them to be? Who knows? Of course, this video can't cover the full consequences of these nerfs because we'll know those in 3 weeks. So who knows, maybe we'll talk about Sepulchre again. There's a bit of me that's kind of tempted to, to hop in and kind of give you guys a number on the normal, heroic, etc. stuff, because, I don't do Mythic. I'm not good enough for that, but lots of us do normal and heroic, right? So I wouldn't mind looking at that. We actually do have the numbers. It was just impossible to fit into this video.
So sad.
Still doing like a proper analysis of this Mythic situation.
I honestly think Bellular is good enough for Mythic. I've seen his gameplay. It's like, people give this Mythic as if it's like this mythical beast that is impossible to do. Mythic in WoW is actually like considerably easier than, I would say. Okay, here's a non-conventional thing. Final Fantasy bosses are very different to Mythic bosses. The reason Final Fantasy bosses are easier than bosses in Mythic raids is because the mechanics are for 8 people and not for 20. If you reduce Mythic difficulty in WoW to 8 people, the bosses are a fucking joke. Straight up. Mythic raids in WoW are actually like not even that hard. The hardest part about Mythic raiding in WoW is literally the raid team. By far. The raid team is so much harder to manage to get to bring the right classes, to align cooldowns properly between the healers, to bring the right healers, to bring the right tanks, bring the right variation of DPS, melee to range and all that stuff, how many casters, how many like hunters and stuff like that. That is the hardest part with WoW raiding. Compared to like versus like Final Fantasy, the hardest part is you actually have to like do everything fucking properly, do the dance properly. When the mechanics are gonna hit. So the only thing I would say with Final Fantasy is like it is easier because every fight is pretty much the same. There's almost no random mechanics. You know which mechanic is coming up. Whereas with WoW, you kind of know, like you know which mechanic is coming up, but because of the randomness of it, and there's 20 people that the mechanic can hit, or like let's say 18, because usually most mechanics don't hit the tanks. It becomes more of a pain in the ass because you have more people that can do mistakes. So literally the most difficult thing with WoW raids is by far the people you raid with, not so much the bosses. That being said, I think Sepulchre was insanely punishing in comparison to any other raids. I would say this is true for 95% of Mythic raid bosses so far. Not true for Kill Jaden, I believe. Kill Jaden it was extremely hard. Not true for the crab, I guess. I don't know. I don't know. Honestly, don't even know about Sepulchre. Okay. True for chains. True for Nathria. True for Nyalotha. Those. I mean, Nyalotha was a fucking joke. So it's like, I mean, yeah. Yeah. The hardest part is the raid team, by far.
It's a fascinating situation, though. And certainly this is a situation that Blizzard does not want to repeat with Dragonflight. So it's going to be fascinating to see how all that goes. And as an almost final update to this video, on the topic of raiding, well, the quote from Ian Hazacostas is very frank and refreshing. It is, we give up, you win.
Yeah, so
He's talking about this whole situation, about the real times they have when these top-end mythic guilds can just get so optimized and their players are so good. I think Blizzard have really realized to themselves,
stop fighting them
to make this content for the average mythic raiders.
Yes.
And I think that's what's going to...
Forget that it's for the average mythic raiders. This content needs to be welcoming for people who want to dabble in mythic, for people who have been doing AOTC for years but never bothered with mythic because mythic was just too much of a bar for them. That's who you want it for. You want mythic to be welcoming to people who have constantly been doing AOTC, and that's it. The people who are doing AOTC, they're not doing it just for the achievement. They're doing like for multiple reasons. One of them is also probably the challenge and the hang out with friends. If the mythic, like let's say it like this, AOTC guilds, in my opinion, are way more chill overall. Outside from like the progression 2-3 weeks. After that, it's very chill runs. Like, people don't get pissed off at each other. You wipe, it's whatever. It's not a big deal. And it's like you're just having fun. Those people would never go to Mythic because everyone's up your ass if you make a mistake. Or it's like you feel bad for making a mistake. It's like, it's the next wipe out of 300. Like, you don't want to be the guy who's causing the wipe. Like, out of 300 times, you're the one who caused it 50 times. Doesn't feel good, right? Shit like that. So yeah, like mythic raiding needs to be a lot more inviting for people who are like mythic curious, mythic curious.
Will be happening in the next expansion now that our game director who of course himself comes from an encounter design background.
Yes.
He's actually very much acknowledged.
I really want Ian to be hands-on raid design. I don't know if he was before. I feel like he wasn't, because no raid has been anywhere near well, actually no, Legion is Nighthold was good, Tomb of Sargeras was good, but there's a very good difference between how they were designed compared to Throne of Thunder. Throne of Thunder not only felt like you're adventuring into a troll stronghold, the bosses were overall, I would say, increasingly harder. Whereas, like, if you take something like Tomb of Sargeras, the last three, so like Maiden was just, one person makes a mistake, was just too punishing. It's not that the boss was hard, but it was too punishing of a fight, in the sense that it's like the smallest mistake is a group wide. Is a raid wipe, right? Avatar, extremely punishing, but challenging. But then Kill Jaden was just a whole other level. It's like he came from the next tier. Compared to like everything in the tier, I would like Kill Jaden was so hard. Kill Jaden was harder when he wasn't even current tier for people who were doing cutting edge on Taurus. So people who are doing cutting edge on Taurus would have a hard time going back to Kill Jaden, outgearing the fuck out of him. That's how hard they made Kill Jaden, right? Just because of that one mechanic, really, just fucking darkness. So because of that, I don't know, like, it was such a bump. But if you take Throne of Thunder, it felt like a massive adventure into a troll stronghold. All the bosses were they just continuously went from easy to hard, right? It's like from easier to harder, and like they're slightly harder, slightly harder, slightly harder, slightly harder, and I think that was great. Like, so I don't know if Ian is actually hands-on the current raid design. Maybe it was just like Throne of Thunder was just like a raid fluke or something, but I hope he gets more hands-on if he isn't. You know?
Problem in interviews. In a frank manner. So it's going to be fascinating.
As far
to
as
see
raids go,
raiding
I mean,
machines
Throne of
in
Thunder is
Dragon
probably one
Fight
of the
as well.
best raids.
Okay, right. That's
I mean,
it for today.
let's say this. I appreciate Throne of Thunder even when I wasn't really playing during Throne of Thunder. Right? I mostly started Mists and then I quit Life and like whatever. I was like, fuck it, like don't have time for this shit. Also wasn't really interested in Pandas, so I wasn't even motivated. But then you had and then I joined in Siege of Orgrimmar. And during Siege of Orgrimmar, I went into Throne of Thunder for a bit, right? Just like there was a random group, and I was like, fuck, let's see what this is. And it was kind of interesting. The whole zone was kind of interesting. Like I think the most iconic thing there, outside of the bosses, was the Ghost Pass, like the Ghost Bridge. That was kind of cool, right? It wasn't very hard, and it was kind of cool, you know? So, yeah. Anyways, that's it for this one, and we'll go yawning for a bit, and then we're gonna go to the next one. I'll see you there.